Good evening. I'm Mihal Chamberlain, President of Massachusetts for Bank of America, and I'm thrilled to virtually be here with you for this year's Chef-a-Thon. As we all know, coronavirus has had a significant negative impact on our communities and a disproportionate impact on vulnerable populations here in Massachusetts. In response, we've partnered with many organizations that are working to address some of our community's most pressing needs, especially access to healthy and nutritious meals. That's why we're so proud of our partnership with Lovin Spoonfuls. I want to thank Ashley and the entire Lovin Spoonfuls team for working around the clock to rescue and distribute healthy, fresh food that would otherwise go to waste to the communities across Massachusetts that need it most. We know that working through this pandemic was no small feat. And further, I'm excited to congratulate you on the distribution of your 20 millionth pound of food. What an incredible milestone that we all can celebrate, albeit virtually, with you here this week. Cheers to our long-standing partnership and continued success. Now let's enjoy tonight's demo.
Hi, my name is Joel Simonson, the Development Officer for Lovin Spoonfuls. Welcome to Chef-a-Thon. We're grateful to you all for your wonderful support. This week, we are joined by some amazing chefs. Special thanks to chefs Daniel Bajorquez, Tracy Chang, Karen Akunowicz, and Douglas Williams for sharing your time and your talents with us. We hope you enjoy.
Not having food not only affects physically, but definitely psychologically. From just plain old being hungry to feeling abandoned.
I first heard about Lovin Spoonfuls through an event. They got all these local chefs to come. As I learned more about it, we thought, what a great way to get involved with the local community. They're connecting a few critical dots that in our country are not being connected.
Food is a human right. I mean, there shouldn't be hungry people, but just the fact that it's a right makes Lovin Spoonfuls work very important.
Hi, my name is Anthony Suma. I'm a food rescue coordinator with Lovin Spoonfuls in the Metro West region. I've been on this route since the expansion began almost 5 years ago. On average, on this route, we pick up around 3,000 pounds of product each day and make sure we find the perfect home for it. I just wanted to take the time to thank you for your support, because with it, we're able to work with great nonprofit agencies like Natick Service Council, Daniel's Table, and A Place to Turn. So thank you and enjoy the program.
Hi, I'm Chef Karen Akunowicz from Fox and the Knife in Boston, and I'm so happy to be working with Lovin Spoonfuls on this cooking demonstration today. Since the pandemic has started, so many people, so many individuals in our community, so many families, so many restaurants have really felt the impact of these times and have really been struggling. Lovin Spoonfuls during this time has rescued more than 4 million pounds of fresh food to distribute to people. It's absolutely amazing. On average, Lovin Spoonfuls rescues 80,000 pounds of fresh food a week. And they're doing something that so few people in the country are doing in terms of fresh food rescue. So I'm always happy whenever I can to talk about not wasting food, utilizing food that maybe isn't perfect, and really how to stretch a few things as far as you can. I mean, that's what I do on a regular basis at home as well. So I hope that you all enjoy this segment. Let's get started. Pasta alla Norma is a Southern Italian dish. And one of the things that I like about it, or I think about when I make it, is that it is a recipe that every family has a different recipe for. Your grandmother, your mother, your auntie, everybody has a different recipe for this. So I like to think that gives us a little bit of license to play around with it. This often has a little bit of anchovy in it. I like to leave that out and make it a completely vegetarian meal. And I actually use this recipe in 3 different ways, which I'll talk to you a little bit about. The main ingredient in this recipe is the humble eggplant. So we're gonna work with an eggplant, an onion, a pepper. I have some rigatoni, and I rescued from my fridge a little bit of wilted spinach that was about to kind of go in the trash maybe tomorrow, and I'm gonna add that to the recipe as well. I think cooking is really using what you have and making the best of it. So whether this eggplant is like a little bit bruised over here, my spinach is a little bit wilted, it's all perfectly delicious, great food that we can make a beautiful recipe out of. So to get started, I wanna make sure that you guys bring a large pot. It doesn't have to be quite this large, but a large pot of water to a boil. So we'll start with that, and then we'll work on our vegetables. So a lot of people peel the skin off eggplant. I typically like a more rustic presentation, and also the skin on the eggplant is great for you, and then we're not wasting any of the product. So I like to say I top and tail it, which means that I take off the little bottom piece and I take off the little top piece, and then it sits flat like this. So I'm just going to cut down the eggplant into chunks. Now eggplant, like a lot of vegetables, is going to cook down so that it becomes much smaller. So you want to think about the pasta shape that you're cooking it with. And I'm using rigatoni today, but you could use spaghetti, you could use penne, you could use fusilli. You could really use this sauce with just about any dried pasta that you have in your cabinet. And I'm just dicing this up into kind of a large dice. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is a really rustic recipe. So for me, that means that each little piece doesn't look perfect, and that's kind of the beauty in it. I'm gonna kind of push my eggplant to the side, and I'm going to slice my garlic. I'm gonna slice a couple cloves of garlic. If you don't have fresh garlic, you can just go ahead, if you have some jarred garlic, some minced garlic, some squeezed garlic in a tube, anything you've got works. And also, what I'll say about this recipe is that any ingredient that you don't have, it's perfectly easy to either leave out or substitute with something else. I always think that you're really cooking when you're kind of like not just following the recipe and sort of going out in the world on your own. And let's be honest, we all have had days where we're kind of like, oh, there's not a lot in the fridge, or I really need to use that thing before it goes bad. I mean, at least in my house, kind of that's how things go. So I've got a little bit of garlic, I've got a whole lot of eggplant. One of the things about the eggplant is also that one eggplant yields a fair amount of product. So we're gonna get a really nice amount of sauce here. And we're gonna pair it with about a pound of pasta. So it's a great amount of food to feed a family and be a main dish for dinner. So I'm taking my onion, I'm slicing it in half. I'm taking off the top and I'm leaving the root end attached. I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna peel that skin back until we get to the layer that's just like a white and light green. And try not to cry while I'm doing it. We're just getting our mise en place together, kind of all of our ingredients. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna slice down the ribs of the onion. I'm gonna make one slice through it. I'm gonna try not to cry. Whew. So one onion, one pepper, one eggplant, and we're gonna have a meal to feed at least a family of 4, if not more. All right, so what I'm gonna do to start this recipe is, and we're gonna get to the pepper in just a second, I am gonna turn on my heavy pot. Try and use a pot that can take a little bit of heat and isn't gonna scorch on the bottom. And I'm gonna add about 1/4 cup of olive oil. Now, if you don't have olive oil, you could always use a light olive oil, a blend that's canola and olive oil, or any kind of neutral oil like vegetable oil. You could use that as well. So I'm gonna go ahead, and I always start with my garlic first. We wanna kind of take away some of that bitterness. A little bench scraper here. That garlic can have. And we wanna kind of mellow that out a little bit before we add everything else. So I can see that my garlic is starting to sizzle. And we really want it to, I always say we want it to dance. We want it to be like happy little dancing garlic, and you want to be able to start to smell it. Something that people do a lot with eggplant is they worry that it's bitter. So often a recipe will call for you to put the eggplant in a colander and maybe salt it. But I really don't think that you have to, especially not in this recipe. We're going to cook it for quite some time, and we're going to cook it down pretty far, and we want all of that liquid and water that it's going to release. We want that, and we want to add it to the sauce. Now this is definitely a sauce that you could freeze. You could make a double batch of this if you had 2 eggplants, 2 peppers, or if you didn't have 2 peppers, if you just had 2 eggplants. You can kind of, you know, take this recipe and build it, freeze it, keep it in your fridge for the week, and use it a couple different times. All right, I can see my garlic is starting to brown, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add my onions. Okay. And we're going to start to let those onions just get a little bit nice and soft before we go ahead and add our eggplant. You know, I know so many of us have been cooking more at home during the pandemic, and I have as well. And one of the things for me is I want things that I can either make early in the week and use all week long, or I am trying to make things that are really fast. I'll get home from work and try and throw something together for dinner. And so this for me can kind of be either of those things. And one of the other things I like about it is a couple different ways that you can use this recipe. So we're going to use it as a pasta sauce today. But one of the things that I love about it is that you can use it as, I like to call it like a chicken bake. So if you have chicken legs or chicken thighs, chicken breasts, if you have pork, even beef, you can kind of sear it and put it in a casserole dish and then cover it with this sauce and bake it in the oven. And now you have a second use for the sauce, and it's absolutely delicious, and you've added some protein to it as well. The other way that I like to utilize this sauce is as the base for a soup. So if I have some, if I've made it for pasta as a pasta sauce and I have some left over, one of the things that I'll do is to use the leftover kind of as a base for a soup. Add a can of chicken broth, add a can of white beans, and then if I have anything kind of green in the fridge, if I have any, you know, spinach or kale or something kicking around, I add that to it as well. And now you have a third meal for the week, which I think is awesome. So our onions are starting to get nice and soft here. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add this eggplant. We're going to stir it all together so that the eggplant is sort of commingling with the onions and the garlic and all of that good stuff. We're going to go ahead and season it. We're adding about a tablespoon of salt here. I'm also going to add a little bit of black pepper. And if you have it, and if you like a little bit of heat, I like to add a little bit of red pepper flake to this dish. So I'll add just about a half a teaspoon there. If you like spicy, if you like it, you know, spicy, if you like it hot, you're gonna add a little bit more red pepper flake. If you don't like heat at all, you can totally omit it from the dish. Okay, so our eggplant is sort of sauteing. It's soaking up all that oil. One of the things about eggplant is that it's like a little sponge. So it soaks up all the flavor of the onion and the garlic, and it soaks up the olive oil really well. We're gonna help it along. We're gonna add a little bit of water to get it going, and we wanna start getting that softened. So we've got that eggplant nice and simmering right here. It's gonna start to brown. It's gonna start to cook down a little bit. So we are going to cook our eggplant for about 10 minutes. It'll get a little bit brown. It's gonna get nice and soft. And while we're doing that, I'm gonna drop my pasta. I'm gonna put my pasta into the boiling water. And I'm using, like I said, I'm using rigatoni today, but you could use anything. You could use the little rotelli, you could use butterflies, you could use, you know, just about anything you want. You could use spaghetti, you could use linguine if you wanted, whatever you've got kicking it in your cabinet. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna salt my water with about 2 tablespoons of water. I don't subscribe to the old wives' tale that you salt your water before you bring it up to a boil, because if you leave your water on for too long, that salt is going to become stronger and stronger. So I salt right before I drop my pasta. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna drop, this is a pound of pasta. I'm gonna go ahead and drop all of it into the water. And I'm gonna give it a nice little stir so it doesn't stick together. So while my eggplant is hanging out and getting really beautiful over here, I'm going to dice my pepper. Now, I'm using a red pepper because that's what I had in my house. But you could use an orange pepper, a yellow pepper, a green pepper, really whatever you have hanging out. I'm gonna save this little top, this ring here. I'm gonna use that as well. I'm gonna take off my end, top and tail. I'm gonna use that end as well. And how I like to cut my pepper is slice right down the side, and then I roll out and slice right down the pepper, so I'm getting rid of the seeds and that ribs, like the rib cage there. And now I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to cut this into kind of medium-sized planks. I always say, you know, in cooking, we take we ooh and ah over all the vegetables and their beautiful shapes and colors. But at the end of the day, we turn everything into like a stick or a square. So we've got our pepper here. I'm gonna just go ahead and cut the end of my pepper. I'm gonna go ahead and cut the top of my pepper. I'm gonna give my eggplant a little stir. I'm gonna go ahead and add my red pepper to the mix. Add that in. I have a little bit of dried oregano in my cabinet. If you've got some dried basil or dried oregano or any sort of dried herbs, you can go ahead and add a little bit of that. I'm adding about a tablespoon here. Now, I'm gonna take, I have some whole peeled canned tomatoes. But honestly, you could use, if you have crushed tomatoes or diced tomatoes, tomato puree, whatever it is, you can go ahead and add whatever you've got. And I just take them and I kind of crush them with the back of a spoon or with a whisk. So we see this is kind of getting nice and saucy. Now, traditionally, there is maybe some olives, maybe some capers thrown in. I've got some sliced black olives here that I'm gonna add, because I had it in my cabinet. I'm using some of that liquid as well. If you don't like them or you don't have them, you do not have to add them. And I'm going to take some of that spinach that I rescued from my fridge that was about to turn, and I'm adding that in. Kind of still mushing up my tomatoes. Okay, you can see this starting to get like nice and saucy and jammy here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cover this because I want those plants to cook down until they're really silky. So I'm going to go ahead and cover this. And I'm going to cook it for a little while longer while my pasta finishes. We're cooking that rigatoni for about 15 minutes. It's a bigger pasta, so it takes a little bit longer. So we're just gonna go ahead and wait for, they're gonna be done at basically the same time, which is really nice. It makes it a quick recipe. So our sauce is almost finished. Our pasta's almost done. I'm gonna take the lid off of our sauce here. And sometimes I take a little whisk and I just use it to sort of break up the eggplant and incorporate it a little bit better into the sauce. And the eggplant gets really silky and it actually forms part of the sauce. So this looks great. Okay, I'm gonna take the pasta out of the water. I'm just going to kind of scoop it out here, but you can also just pour it into a colander. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add this all to our dish. Take a nice big spoon. Let this simmer together. If you have a little fresh basil, you could always add that. And I add that at the end so it doesn't cook down too much. We always want to cook our pasta in our sauce for just a few minutes. We cook it 2/3 of the time in the water and we cook the rest of the time with the sauce. At this point you could add a couple tablespoons of olive oil or butter if you wanted to. You don't have to. I'm going to give it a little taste and see if it's seasoned. It's really good. Let me go ahead and I'm going to add a little bit more salt, a little bit more pepper. Now, I like it spicy, so I'm going to add a little bit more red pepper flake. I'm going to check it out. So you're getting if you have a little Parmesan, a little shake cheese, a little pecorino, you can add that. I'm going to go ahead and try this. So good. You are getting so many vegetables in this dish. We're able to stretch it so far, and like I said, you can freeze the sauce, you put it in the fridge, you can use it as a bake, like a chicken bake. You could also use it as the base for a soup. So lots of ways to use these ingredients. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Thank you, Lovin Spoonfuls, for having me, and thank you for all the good work that you do. I appreciate it. Bon appetito, guys.
Hey everyone, well, that's a wrap. Thanks so much for helping us kick off 2021's first Chef-a-Thon. Thanks again to Chef Karen for always sharing your food, your spirit, and your commitment to Lovin Spoonfuls with us. That was awesome. I also want to thank our sponsors, our entire community of supporters for continuing to be there for us and for everyone we serve this week. This was such a great week, and I invite all of you to join us for a few more events we'll have in the coming months, including our Learnin' with Lovin series and another Chef-a-Thon at the end of the summer. Things are looking up, guys, so stay healthy, stay strong, and don't forget that we're still in this all together. See you soon. Thanks.